Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today I'm going to go through some different types of tools to get going or get started or to move ahead as you're doing leather crafting. So I'll put some links to these tools in the description. Make sure you check those out. I'm not making anything off of those links or anything. I just put them on there for information only, in case you wanted to go check some of those tools out, see the cost, see where you might be able to purchase some of these tools. So come on in and let's get started. Alright, the first tool I'm going to start with is an edge beveler. And if you've watched any of my videos, you've probably seen me use this tool quite a bit. But they come in different widths depending on the thickness of the leather you're working on. I've only got two that I use. One wider, like this one, for thicker leather, and then I have a narrower one for thinner leather. And basically, you see, when you cut your leather, you end up with a sharp edge, corner. And all this edge beveler does is take that sharp corner off and bevels it. So now it's at an angle, so it's not a sharp edge. So that's an edge beveler. And again, I have links to these tools in the description. Stitching chisels. I have several stitching chisels. I bought a set, and then I had an individual one when I first started, but I believe I bought these on Amazon as a set. I've got a 6-tooth stitching chisel. I've got a 4-tooth right there. I've got one that has 2 teeth, and then I do have a single tip chisel. Now, the reason I have so many is if I'm doing a belt, something long and a straight line, then I can use the 6-tooth. But if I start doing, let's say, like knife sheaths or gun holsters, then I'm doing curves and everything, then I may need to go down to the 4 or even the 2 to get around a corner or something. But what stitching chisels for is to mark your stitching holes. And those teeth, if you take a look at that chisel again, they're exactly the same distance apart. So it gives you perfect holes for stitching. And then when you do the next one, you put that first chisel point in the last hole that you just marked, and then you stamp it again. So it keeps those holes even all the way down your piece. So those are very, very handy, and I would suggest, they're not that expensive, so if you want to get into that, I would get me at least a 4-piece set. Next, round drive punches, and I believe I bought a set of 6 of these round drive punches, and you can see it's got a slot in the side of it, and that's for all of the punched material to come out of, so it gets expended. Let me drive a punch through this scrap piece of material. And you can see what it does is it makes a perfect round hole of that specific size. This one is a 1/4 inch, so that made a perfect 1/4 inch hole in that leather. I use my 1/8 inch round drive punch a lot because I use it. You can see how small a hole it is. I use it for my snaps and my rivets. A multi-size wood slicker. And this is a wood slicker made out of wood. It has multi-sizes because these slots are different widths depending on how thick of leather you're working with. Where we beveled that edge, if I just kind of moisten that a little bit, then I can take my wood slicker, and I am giving a little pressure, but mostly I'm just using speed so that I'm getting some friction on it. And hopefully you can see that edge now. See that right there? And what it does is it just literally slicks that edge down, and you may be able to see it's a little shiny, and it just smooths it down, makes it nice and slick. So that is a multi-sized wood slicker. A stitching groover. If you've watched any of my videos in the past, you've seen me use this tool several times. And this one is an adjustable groover, and the part that's adjustable out here does have a tiny hole in it, and it's sharp, so you can adjust it for how far you want your groove, your stitching groove, away from the edge of your material. And I'll do a groove real quick here, and you can see it does, that little hole does take out the material, and what it leaves you is a nice straight groove line. And what you can do with that groove line, that's going to be the line that you're going to follow your stitching chisels in, so that you have good straight lines for your stitches. So that is a stitching grooving tool, or stitching groover. Next, I'm going to show a strap cutter, and I'll take another piece of scrap. This is a strap cutter, and it is adjustable. It does have a ruler on it, so you can change the width. It does have a razor sharp blade in it, and you can buy replaceable blades. You can see the blade right here. And this part is flat. So when you get ready to make a strap, you put your leather against that flat part, put it in with the blade, and push it through until it comes out the other side. Then you can grab it and just pull it through, and you can see it makes a strap. And you can adjust that for whatever thickness or width you want your strap to be. In other words, if you're making dog collars or something, you might want it 3/4 to an inch. If you were making a belt, you may want it 1.5 to 2 inches wide. If you're making a gun belt, then you might want it 3 inches wide. So you can do that with your strap cutter. Hang that back up out of the way. And then I do have one oblong punch. You can buy these in sets also, and this one is a 1/2 inch oblong punch, and it goes by the width of the punch itself. I use this for belts, for belt buckles, the prong that goes on a belt buckle, And let me put one in this scrap piece and I'll show you. And that's what it makes, an oblong punch. And that way this will fold over your belt buckle. And that's mainly what I use that for. Again, that's oblong punches, and they come in different sizes. A poly mallet, this is one that I got when I first started. It came in a kit, a beginner's kit that I bought. I just purchased this one not too long ago off of Amazon, and again the description, or the link is in the description. This one is a little heavier, takes a little more time to get used to using this one than this one, but once you get the hang of this, it works really well. Either one of them will work. Just have a decent quality poly mallet. Rounded end punches. I've got several of these. I did buy these online in a set, and I think I ended up with 9 or 10 of them that came in the set. But these round end punches are for like making belts, straps, so that you have a squared off end like this, and I can take my round end punch and round that end off, and it'll be perfect every time. So it does a great job of rounding off, and depending on the width of your leather is going to depend on which of those punches you use. I've got them anywhere from 2-inch all the way down to a 1/4 inch. So it just depends on the width of my leather that I'm using. A stitching horse, let me show you that real quick. I'm going to move you. And a stitching horse is basically like having another set of hands when you get ready to stitch a project, whether it's a knife sheath, a wallet, doesn't matter what it is, a holster. This stitching horse comes in real handy to hold your material while you're doing the stitching, so that you don't have to try to hold it and only do it with one hand. So it gives you an extra set of hands. You may see in the links, you may see it called a stitching pony or a stitching horse, either one. Alright, next is a folding utility knife. You want to have a good heavy duty utility knife. I like the ones that fold the best. They're much safer. It keeps the blade out of harm's way. It also has a nice quick change button here if you want to change the blade or flip the blade over. It does have a non-slip flat spot right here, so you can use it to really get some push down on the blade when you're cutting. I just like the weight of it. It feels nice and heavy. So you want to make sure you find you a good locking, folding utility knife. Stitching needles. You can buy these in packs, different amounts or quantities of needles in different sizes. This is the size that I like to use the most. I'm trying to remember, I think they go by numbers, but you can see it when you look at the link in the description. You'll see what I'm talking about as far as size of the needles. And those are round. I do prefer the round ones. Here's the flat ones. The flat leather needles. They work pretty well too, and they've got a little locking mechanism here so that it'll lock your stitch so your thread won't slide out of it. So it's all personal preference of what you want to use, but I buy several of them. They're inexpensive. Most of the time they come in these plastic tubes, and I like to buy the variety pack sometimes so that I have different sizes in stock. Here's a curved needle. So they come in all different sizes and shapes and types, and you just that's why I bought a variety pack at one time so I could try different ones and see which ones I like the most. And as I said, they're inexpensive, so it's easy to do that with. A stamping set. I've got several stamps that I've collected over time. Here's a couple of veiners. Here's a seating or a cedar tool. Here's a basket weave tool. Here's a beveling tool. Here's a pear shader. Here's what they call a mule's foot. And I've got a bunch more. So it's just, you can pick these up individually as you start using them, or you can buy them in sets. I'll do a pear shader here. I'll do a cedar. I'll do a mule's foot, and I'll show you the difference here. And I would normally, before I did any stamping, I would case this leather with some water, but that gives you an idea of different types of stamping. There's the veiner, there's the cedar, and then there's the mule's foot. But you can buy all kinds of decorative stamps. Those are just kind of some of the basic ones that I've collected since starting this leather crafting. Alright, that's the stamping set. Having a good awl, scratching awl. This one is a Craftsman. It can be any type, just as long as it has a good sharp point. And using that for marking things, for cleaning out holes if need be. I also like using a stylus a lot, and I do have a metal stylus that has a point on one end, and it's covered with a rubber sleeve. Then it has a little flattened spoon shaped on the other end, and that works really good for finishing out my stitches when I melt the waxed thread. But I do like to keep a stylus around, a good stylus and a good awl. Cutting mats. These self-healing cutting mats are awesome. Couldn't do without one. They have the measurements already on them. You get into the 12 by 18 sized ones, like this one, and they work great, and they're fairly inexpensive. Now when you get into the bigger ones, like that are 3 foot long, those get pricey. But depending on how big a project you're going to be working on will depend on how big of a self-healing cutting mat you need. I like them because they have the grid on there, and I can square up a piece of leather very, very quickly with this. So get yourself a good self-healing cutting mat. Also, leather scissors. These are inexpensive. I think I gave $10 or less for them. They are titanium, but you don't have to spend a fortune on a good heavy-duty pair of leather scissors, but you want to make sure you have you a nice pair. Then the last thing is a good swivel knife. If you're going to do any decorative carving or anything like that, you want to get into that. Get you a good quality. It doesn't have to be the highest priced one. Just make sure it's a decent quality swivel knife, one that you can change the blade in. The key to that is to keep your blade good and sharp. Practice. With a swivel knife, I found that I take scraps and I'll put some images on a piece of leather and I just practice cutting it. I'm not going to keep it. I'm not going to make a project out of it. I just want to practice using my swivel knife and get used to having that that finger in that stirrup and swiveling that knife as I cut around corners and keeping that point down in that leather. You'll notice that I don't know if you can see it, but that is beveled. And you see the tip of that is beveled, and that will widen out or spread that leather apart as you use your swivel knife and cut that. So it gives you a good surface to do some using your bevel stamp and those tying up. That's what's going to give you the depth when you're doing your carving. Alright, that's some of the basic tools that I use. You don't have to have all those to get started. If you want to get started in leather crafting, just get some of the basic tools like your knife and your beveler and your wood slicker. You know, you can get started making things that way and then add to your tool collection as you move on. So they also sell beginning kits that have a lot of that stuff in it. So you might check those out online on the 2 websites that I gave you links for in the description. Check that out. And I'm putting every one of these tools linked in the description. So it's going to be a lengthy list, but at least you'll have some place to click on and it'll go and show you these tools, what they cost, give you an idea. You can compare costs between a couple of different places. So I appreciate you coming along, appreciate you spending the time with me. Come back next week, we'll be starting a brand new project, and as I always say, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.